What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through the top waiver wire targets heading into week 7 of the NFL season. I think it's a pretty interesting week for the waiver wire. Some fun running back plays, both in the short and long term, some interesting wide receiver options, and then also a couple of tight ends who could be playable if you are desperate. These are going to be guys that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues. I'm going to try to order them by like how important I think they are as pickups, but it's obviously going to depend on your specific roster, your league settings, all of those things. If you guys enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, drop them down below. But let's dive into my number one target here. It is going to be Ty Chandler, who's rostered in 33.5% of leagues, and he actually did not play in week 6. He is coming off of a week 6 bye. But I think he is very relevant now because of the injury that Aaron Jones suffered in week 5. So he went down with a hip injury, did not return to that game. It is being reported that he is week to week. Now, if he's week to week, maybe he misses week 6 with the bye, recovers, comes back week 7. But it's also possible he misses week 7. Maybe it lingers. He could be out for week 8. And if Aaron Jones is out of the lineup, Ty Chandler is a very strong running back to play. We saw Ty Chandler dominate the snaps once Aaron Jones left in week 5. He had success last year, kind of operating as the lead back, had some games. I think he had one specific game where he was like the clear-cut workhorse, had a monster workload. So Ty Chandler, a very interesting option if Aaron Jones is out of the lineup. We obviously want pieces of this Vikings offense. They're going to be efficient on the ground. He's going to have touchdown upside. They're going to pass to these running backs. So if Aaron Jones misses any time, Ty Chandler is a very strong play. And I also think that even if Aaron Jones comes back and plays here in week 7, in your competitive leagues, Ty Chandler should still be rostered, like worst case scenario as a handcuff, because if Aaron Jones suffers another injury, re-aggravates, this hip injury, Ty Chandler is someone who just slides right into your starting lineup. Then looking at a wide receiver here, someone who's pretty interesting to break down, it is going to be JuJu Smith-Schuster, rostered in 17.8% of leagues. And he's someone who kind of might have slipped through the cracks when it came to waivers last week because the Chiefs had a week 6 bye. And typically, like unless you're searching out a specific player, when you're making your waiver wire claims, you're looking at the list of guys that's ordered by projected points. So with the Chiefs having a week 6 bye, he wasn't listed. So, maybe he kind of got missed by your league mates and he is now still on waivers heading into week 7. Rashee Rice now confirmed out for the season here. And in the first game without Rice, JuJu stepped up week 5, was targeted 8 times, caught 7 of those for 130 yards. Now, it's kind of an odd situation here because JuJu was like kind of a last-minute signing here for the Chiefs. They brought him in. He had some familiarity within their offense, but he was actually cut by the Patriots. The Patriots, who I think most would agree probably have the worst wide receiver room in the NFL, the Patriots did not deem him good enough to be on their roster. So it's a little bit odd that someone who, has struggled the last few years, obviously, like I said, was cut by the Patriots, is now going to step in and be like the lead wide receiver here for the Chiefs. I guess it really just shows you like the brilliance of Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, but this could have been a one-off spot here, but the usage, is kind of there. He's getting those starting wide receiver snaps. Like I said, he does have the familiarity within this offense. And then you look at a guy like Xavier Worthy, who I think most would kind of expect to step up. And I do think he'll improve, rest of season, but he really hasn't proven the ability to earn targets at a high level. So at least in the short term, I do think JuJu's probably playable. Like I said, though, it's a weird situation because I don't know if the talent is still there with JuJu, but he looked great in week 5, wide receiver 1, even for kind of a struggling Chiefs offense, still very valuable with Patrick Mahomes. Then we're going to go back to the running back position, and just like Ty Chandler, a guy who had a week 6 bye, it is going to be Blake Corum, who's rostered in 17.3% of leagues. And in week 5, prior to the bye, we finally saw Blake Corum kind of fully take over as the clear-cut running back 2. Early on in the season, it was like Ronnie Rivers working in. Week 5, it was Blake Corum. He was the guy. Don't believe Ronnie Rivers even played a snap in that one. Rookies tend to have the opportunity to see an expanded role coming out of the bye week. Not a perfect example because we had Gus Edwards go on IR, but Kimani Vidal, who I'm going to talk about later, we saw him obviously see an expanded role coming out of the week 5 bye. And we've seen Kyren Williams handle a very significant workload through 5 games here. He's also kind of struggled with his efficiency. I think it's possible to kind of reevaluate things at the bye week. Not that Blake Corum's going to come in and overtake Kyren Williams, but I could see them giving him a few more opportunities per game, giving him a larger role moving forward. But the ultimate upside here for Blake Corum and why you want to roster him is that he's probably the most valuable handcuff in the NFL. Now that he's locked down that RB2 spot, if Kyren Williams goes down, pretty much that entire workload is just going to get piled on to Blake Corum on an offense that should be better rest of season once they start to get healthy, especially those wide receivers. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua should be coming back soon. So if Kyren Williams goes down, who, by the way, smaller running back, handling a large workload, has an injury history, Blake Corum, I think at some point is going to get the opportunity to lead this backfield. And when he does, I mean, he is a set it and forget it option within your lineup. Another guy who I kind of think is in that elite handcuff territory is going to be Braelon Allen, who's rostered in 36.7% of leagues. Now, the difference here with Braelon Allen is that he definitely has more week-to-week usage. Over the last 4 weeks, obviously this is before Monday Night Football, he is averaging 7.8 carries and 2.5 targets per game. And I think there are definitely a few routes here for Braelon Allen to kind of improve on his production. The first one is I do think he could continue to expand his workload, especially near the goal line. This dude is an absolute monster. He is a physical freak. However, he's still not really being maximized near the goal line. Through 5 weeks, he has 3 red zone opportunities, no goal line carries. Do think he could kind of work his way in there. Also, just with Breece Hall struggling, I think there is the opportunity. I think there's also the upside that this Jets offense starts to improve, starts to kind of figure things out. You know, the efficiency could go up. The touchdown upside would go up here for Braelon Allen. So definitely a few opportunities for him to be more, reliable week to week. But I also think, the most important aspect of Braelon Allen's value is that handcuff upside. Like, sure, he could get better as like a weekly RB3 play, but the upside is that if Breece Hall goes down, Braelon Allen is a locked-in start in your lineup. Worst case scenario, he's a running back 2. Could make a very strong case he would be a weekly running back 1 with a Breece Hall injury. And then another running back here is going to be Kimani Vidal, rostered in 2.2% of leagues. And he is someone who I talked about as a sleeper this offseason. I've talked about him in a lot of my in-season waiver wire videos. And we saw a very optimal rollout here post-bye for Vidal. You had Gus Edwards, who was put on IR. Vidal was active for the first time all season, and he pretty much stepped right into the running back 2 role. His first NFL touch was a 38-yard touchdown reception, so that was great to see in the first quarter. He only logged 4 carries, 2 targets, but it does look like he is the running back 2 here behind J.K. Dobbins. And I think we have to talk about J.K. Dobbins here because he's been super fun through 5 weeks. He's been, a great story. He has played very well, or I guess through 6 weeks. But prior to 2024, in Dobbins' last 3 seasons, he has played 9 out of 51 possible games. So the injury history is very real. He hasn't played over half a season since his rookie year in 2020. So right now, he's the running back 2, but I think it's very possible. I don't want to say likely, but I do think it's likely for at least a week or 2, right? At like the bare minimum, that Kimani Vidal is going to be operating as the running back 1 at some point this season. We know their Chargers want to run the ball. They want to feed their running backs. So he is someone who is very interesting and could just continue to expand his role. He's a rookie, getting more comfortable, kind of continuing to show this coaching staff. And like we saw, he does have that receiving upside, with that long touchdown catch. So Vidal, very interesting. Like I said, only rostered in 2.2% of leagues. So definitely could be out there even in your more competitive spots. They're looking at a few wide receivers here. We have Xavier Legette, rostered in 28.9% of leagues. He has scored touchdowns in his last 2 full games. He is operating as the wide receiver 2 in terms of his snaps, his routes. This is something I'm going to talk about. I talk about it a lot. When these young players start to break out, they show you they're talented, you'll want to buy in, even if the situation doesn't seem ideal. Wide receiver 2 for the Panthers, Deontay Johnson's the clear wide receiver 1. If a player's talented enough, they will produce regardless. Also have the upside of Deontay Johnson. Panthers not really competing. Could he get moved if they're not going to lock him down long term? They could move on from him. League could step up, be the wide receiver 1. So a young, talented player. I want guys like that on my fantasy roster. Another guy who could kind of fit the mold for that is Demario Douglas, rostered in 21.1% of leagues. And you look at Drake May's debut here, it went about as well as you could have hoped for. 343 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Douglas led the team with 9 targets, turned that into 6 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. Now, I think it's still unclear whether Douglas is going to be like the locked-in number 1 target. the wide receiver one. It's just a 1 week sample size here with Drake May. But what is clear is that Drake May brings some upside to this offense. He brings some juice to these pass catchers. And so if Douglas can string together some decent games here, I do think at this point he's definitely the best bet to be like their wide receiver one, their top option. Then maybe he does kind of become playable. And I think, we've kind of settled into this thing of like this Patriots offense is so bad. Drake May's going to struggle. The offensive line is terrible. Like no one's going to do anything. We've seen guys step into less than optimal situations and produce right out of the gate. I know you look at like CJ Stroud and now he has all these weapons. It looks like it's a great situation. People thought the CJ Stroud landing spot was like terrible heading into last year. He obviously balled out. I'm not comparing this Patriots team to the Texans of last year, but like heading into the year, people did not expect that. Even a guy like Jaden Daniels, like people did not think that was a good landing spot. And on paper, it did not look like a good landing spot. But when you're talented, you're going to produce. I think Drake May will be fine. And hopefully he can support Demario Douglas here moving forward. Then we have Romeo Doubs, who's rostered in 29.6% of leagues. And I mean, this was just like a complete 180. He was suspended week 5. He comes back week 6. They didn't put him in the doghouse. They threw him back into his normal role, leading this wide receiver room in routes. And he delivered 3 receptions, 49 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't think he's ever going to be the best option week to week, but he's definitely someone who could filter into your lineup, bye weeks, injuries. You have 2-3 wide receivers out. You could do worse than Romeo Doubs as like your flex option, your wide receiver 3 play. So good to see him bounce back. This was like worst case scenario for Dontavian Wicks, who really had like 1 week to do anything. He ends up leaving this game with injury. You have Christian Watson back sooner than expected. Romeo Doubs just slides right back in. So Doubs definitely interesting if he's out there. Could be playable if you are desperate. Then we're going to go back to the running back position here with Sean Tucker, who is rostered in 1% of leagues. So very likely he is out there on your waiver wire. And I think a lot of people thought this was like the, Bucky Irving spot. Rachaad White's out. Bucky Irving's going to be the workhorse. He's going to have a monster day. And Bucky Irving, had a very solid day, both from a real life perspective and a fantasy perspective. But I mean, this was just a nuclear Sean Tucker game. 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 3 passes for 56 yards and a touchdown. Now, I think it's a very interesting backfield moving forward because if Rachaad White continues to miss time, I feel like we kind of look at this backfield just like we did before, where it was like 50-50 Rachaad White, Bucky Irving. If White misses, it looks like it's going to be 50-50 Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker. If Rachaad White returns, I feel like there's a few different ways this could shake out. The first one would be, obviously not great for Tucker, but it would just be he just slips back into like that RB3 spot. They continue to run the committee with Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. I think probably worst case scenario for everyone involved would be this turns into a 3-headed committee where you're like, all right, Rachaad White's going to come back to, somewhat of his normal usage, but we want to get Sean Tucker more involved. That would just suck for everyone because it would pretty much make everyone unplayable. I do think there's the opportunity here where the Bucs look at Rachaad White, terribly inefficient on the ground in his first 2 seasons. Early on in 2024, he has also struggled to be efficient on the ground. And then you compare that with 2 young running backs, Bucky Irving as a rookie, Sean Tucker in year 2, and they've come in, they have been efficient, they have been explosive, things that Rachaad White really has not. And I think they could make the tough call of, all right, we're going to roll with Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker as our RB1 and RB2 rest of season. Now, I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but I'm just throwing it out there that it could be possible. So if you're someone who's like, I have zero interest in picking up Sean Tucker because he's just going to slip back to the RB3 spot, it's possible that is what happens. But I think there are some other outs here where Sean Tucker, does have a little bit of juice rest of season. Then we're going to go to a wide receiver here with Jalen Tolbert, rostered in 39.5% of leagues. He definitely looks like the Cowboys wide receiver 2 moving forward at this point, especially with Brandon Cooks out. He's averaging 10.8 PPR points per game. I don't think he's a super reliable play week to week as of right now, but he could kind of get there moving forward. This Cowboys offense has been a little bit sketchy, coming off a very embarrassing loss here to the Lions. So you could definitely do worse in your lineup than like Dak Prescott's wide receiver 2, but you'd like to see a little bit more consistency, both from Tolbert and this Cowboys offense. Then we're going to go to another deeper option here, kind of like that Sean Tucker stash. We're going to talk about Isaac Guerendo here, who is rostered in under 1% of leagues. And looking at this 49ers wide receiver room, you have CMC, who seems like he is still at least a couple weeks away. You have Jordan Mason, who left that Thursday night game with a shoulder injury. Seems like he is day-to-day with a sprained AC joint. This is just a spot where if Jordan Mason and CMC both miss this next game, where Guerendo could definitely be playable. He came in, rushed for 99 yards on 10 carries, sealed the game with a 76-yard run. Seemed like he could have gotten to the end zone, but he kind of made the business decision, or the team decision, slid down so they could ice the game. He's an interesting player here, a day 3 rookie. This dude is an insane athlete. He's 6 foot, 221 pounds, but ran a 4.33 40. A 4.33 40 is insanely fast for anyone. Like, super skinny dude, running a 4.33 40 is amazing. To do it at 6 foot, 221 pounds, that is, freakish stuff out of Isaac Guerendo. So I definitely think he's playable, probably as like an RB2 option if Jordan Mason misses time. If Mason's back, he probably doesn't have a ton of juice rest of season just because you also have the CMC return looming, but, could be playable this week, like I said, if Mason misses. Then we have Mattison, who is rostered in 35.6% of leagues. Had a pretty big fantasy day with Zamir White out, 33 rushing yards, rushing touchdown, 5 receptions for 32 yards. With Zamir White out, he's seen pretty strong usage on the ground, 15 and 14 carries. The issue is this Raiders backfield is just so inefficient on the ground. The efficiency of the last couple of weeks has been really bad from Mattison. It seems like whoever's getting the bulk of the carries just can do nothing with them. So if White continues to miss time, I guess Mattison could be like a sketchy play in your lineup. It feels so gross, but like 14, 15 carries, some receiving usage, it's playable, I guess, kind of unfortunately. I don't even know if it's unfortunately, but it just seems gross firing up in your lineup. But if you're desperate, I get it. Definitely could be playable. And then a couple of tight ends here. Taysom Hill, rostered in 22.9% of leagues. He has missed the last 2 games. I do think he's in that like fringe tight end 1 territory when he is healthy. He's going to be used near the goal line. So offense has kind of struggled without him. Going to have that creative usage. And then we have Hunter Henry, who is rostered in 18.3% of leagues. Just like Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry definitely benefited from Drake May stepping in here. 4 targets, 3 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He ran the second most routes on this offense. So I definitely think May could make him playable as like a fringe tight end 1, just kind of raising the ceiling and floor of this whole offense. And then some, I guess, just handcuff running backs who could be interesting. Emmanuel Wilson, Roshan Johnson, Damian Pierce, Trey Benson, all worth adds in your deeper leagues if you have a bench spot available. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you guys enjoyed, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, drop them down below. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.